In two places in the book of Matthew, it tells us that the one who endures to the end shall be saved. Today we are asking the question, what did Jesus mean when he said that? For the Arminian who believes that salvation can be lost, it's a warning that the Christian who does not successfully endure persecution will lose their salvation and be eternally damned. For the Calvinist or Reformed believer, it's a way of identifying the true believer, because the person who is truly regenerate will be given strength by God to persevere to the end, even through great persecution. If you don't persevere, you were never truly saved to begin with. Today, however, I would like to offer up a third possibility, and that is that this verse has nothing at all to do with spiritual salvation. First, let's go ahead and dive into the two passages in the book of Matthew where we find these words. We're going to start here with Matthew 10:16 through 22. Jesus is sending out the apostles, and he has a word of warning for them. Behold, I send ye forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues, and ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak, for it shall be given you in that same hour what ye shall speak, for it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. And now let's take a look at Matthew 24:7 through 13. The apostles have asked Jesus for a sign of the end of the world and of his second coming. He says, For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another, and many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. So again, what is it that Jesus is talking about here? First, as Christians, I know that we have a tendency, whenever we see the word saved or salvation, to immediately think of spiritual salvation. That is, the salvation of the soul from damnation. But the fact of the matter is that the Greek word really means more than that. Saved here comes from the Greek word sozo, the verb meaning to save. If we look in Vine's Expository Dictionary, it provides a number of different usages of the word sozo, and in the first usage, it says that the word is used, quote, of material and temporal deliverance from danger, suffering, etc. Some dictionaries also provide the definition to rescue in addition of to save. In fact, the word sozo is the Greek word behind the word save in Matthew 8:25. In this passage, the apostles are out on the water with Jesus, and a raging storm threatens to capsize their boat, and we read, And his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. Clearly, this passage here has nothing to do with spiritual salvation. So what we can see here is that the word sozo, or in English to save, is not an inherently theological term. It certainly can and often does refer to the spiritual salvation of the soul, but it also has a broader, more general meaning of being saved or rescued from temporal circumstances. Just as a person can be saved from hell, that same person can be saved from falling off the edge of a cliff or saved from a bear attack. Now, when we take a look at our two passages in question, what are some of the threats that are presented? Well, let's see. There is scourging, family members delivering each other up to death, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, more delivering up to be killed, betrayals, hatred, false prophets, abounding iniquity, and because of all the above, the love of many growing cold. So if you don't already see where I'm going here, it's this. Like I said in my intro, I don't think the verse is about spiritual salvation. I don't think it's saying if you endure persecution without denying the faith, then you get to go to heaven, but if you don't, you go to hell. I think that Jesus is making the plain statement that if you somehow manage to endure, that is, survive, all of the various threats that will be present in the world during that time and make it to the end, then you will be saved. That is, you will survive physically because you outlasted all of the things in this world that were attempting to destroy you. Now, if the case so far is not compelling for you, I think that we have been given a key to understanding what Jesus means when he says that the one who endures to the end will be saved. And that key is presented in the same discourse that we quoted from previously in Matthew chapter 24. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. This is the only other time in either passage that we've looked at where Jesus talks about being saved. And clearly what he is referencing here is physical salvation. That is, the threats will be so great that if the days were not shortened, then there would be no one who would be saved. Not a one. That is, no flesh. And even under the circumstances that are going to be allowed, many people still aren't going to make it. They will succumb. They will not endure to the end because they will be killed. But for those who somehow manage to survive to the end of these days that Jesus is talking about, then they, that is, their flesh, will be saved. They will be saved physically because they outlasted the things that threatened them. Now, this is not a novel position that I just came up with. While it's certainly not universally held by biblical scholars, you can do your own research and you should find other resources that support this perspective. But I think that perhaps what the most important thing is to understand here is that the words saved or salvation and their derivatives are not always being used theologically. In fact, I'm reminded of a time a while back where I was commenting on this subject on some other YouTube video, and I said that I think that these passages are talking about physical salvation. And this one guy responded, and he said, and this is a quote, "You're literally adding to the Bible." That's what he told me. The irony here is that it was quite clear to me that whenever he would run across any reference to salvation or to being saved, that there was an automatic downloading of theological presuppositions onto the text. And I think that this is pretty common because as Christians, we are preconditioned whenever we see any sort of reference to salvation to immediately think of the eternal salvation of the soul, and it can be difficult to break out of this mindset. But I do think that we need to work on analyzing every passage with regard to its context and to understand that sometimes the biblical authors spoke of being saved in various ways and not just being saved from damnation. So I hope that I've provided an interesting perspective on a verse that is often used to support the idea that if you don't hold out under persecution, then you'll lose your salvation. Maybe you can use some other verses to support that. We'll have to discuss those another time. But this is why I don't think that you can use Jesus' statements here in these passages to do so, because eternal salvation is not what is in view. I do hope that this has at least made you think, if nothing else, and driven home the importance of always paying attention to the context when reading anything in the Bible. Thanks so much for stopping by. Please do click like, click subscribe if you haven't already done so, and click the bell. And as always, I will talk to you later.